Like many of the casts, Axl Low now has a decreased defense modifier value, so he takes less damage overall in this patch. In the old patch, he took 110 damage from this sequence here. This is what he takes in the current patch. 105 damage, so overall a loss of 5 damage on him. Axl will appreciate being a little more tanky in this patch because he's always been a low health character that the idea was if you can get in, you deserve to kill him pretty quickly. So I'm redoing this one section compared to my original upload, thanks to a comment from Rick Nicholas that reminded me that Axl has sweet spots on all of his normals. In my original take, I asserted that this was a new change for Axl, but it's been part of his character for quite some time. And honestly, I feel like I remembered it, but I clearly didn't when I was recording the first initial video. So I'm restructuring this section to properly compare the damage between the sweet spot of his normals. So up close in the old patch, we can see that his 5p does 30 damage, but if you hit the max range sweet spot, you get 39 damage. Let's compare that to the new version. The damage on the sweet spot of his 5p in the current version goes up from 39 to 45, so an increase of 6 damage. Next is the damage on his 2p sweet spot. In the old patch, it did 29 damage. This is the damage in the new patch. 33, so a small increase of about 4 damage. Next up is his 6k. In the old patch, it did 39 damage. This is the damage in the new patch. 45. The move also launches the opponent at a slightly higher angle, so it's probably easier for Axl to get pickups off of this near the corner. His 2S did this much damage in the old patch. 33 on the sweet spot hit. This is the new patch damage. 39, so another minimal increase. 2 Heavy Slash had the buff as well. Its sweet spot did 43 damage in the old patch. Meanwhile, in the new patch, it does this much damage. 50, so a pretty nice increase. And then 3 of Axl Low's jumping normals had the change applied to them as well. Jumping Punch, Jumping Slash, and Jumping Heavy Slash. Let's go ahead and look at the sweet spots. 30 damage was the old sweet spot damage. 36 is the new sweet spot damage, so an increase of 6. Now for JS's sweet spot. It did 30 damage in the old patch. In the new patch, they do 36, so another increase of 6 damage. Lastly, his Jump Heavy Slash's sweet spot. In the old patch, it did 39 damage. Lastly, his Jump Heavy Slash. Its sweet spot does 45 damage in this game. Again, another increase of about 6 damage. This is something that Axl will a bit appreciate just because this will offset the reduction of defense value modifiers across the cast, meaning that he's able to kind of keep about the same damage, I think, that he was doing prior to that system change to most of the cast. So it's something that reinforces that playstyle that Arxis wants from him, where he's doing correct spacing to zone you out in order to get these optimal hits on you. Sickle Flash, or Rensen, has a couple of changed properties to it. Before, you could not cancel this into his 1 Vision Super. Additionally, it also did 27 damage overall. It was also a charge move, requiring a back charge and then forward to activate it. Now let's go over the changes to Sickle Flash. The first obvious one is that the damage has been increased from 27 to 37. If you pay attention to my inputs, you'd also note that this is no longer a charge move, but it's instead a quarter circle forward input. This is pretty big for Axl, as it means he no longer has to rely on doing combo routing that has him build charge. Instead, he can freeform in this and get some follow-ups that probably weren't possible before. Additionally, he can now cancel this into 1 Vision. Again, opening up some potential combo routing for the character. But we'll see overall how much these changes actually impact him. In addition to that, it seems that the follow-ups to Sickle Flash, at least 2 of them anyway, have also seen increased damage. Soaring Chain Strike does more. In the old patch, it was 42, as well as Winter Cherry also does more damage. It did 47 in the old patch. This is what the damage looks like in the current patch. 58 for the Soaring Chain Strike. And 64 for Sickle Flash here. So, a little bit of a damage buff that Axl appreciates, I suppose. The special move Snail also has increased damage. In the old patch, it did 33 here. This is the new version damage. 39, so an increase of 6. Additionally, Whistling Wind also has a buff where now on a grounded hit, it launches the opponent, allowing for new pickups. As you can see in the previous version, if you fully charge, you're able to get some grounded extensions, but only if it was fully charged. Now, Whistling Wind will launch, so Axl is actually able to pick up some combos with this. The 2K was not possible to link before. And this potentially has some setups for him to go in Axl Bomber loops, I imagine. Something new for him to play with. Now, arguably for the most important change to Axl Low in this patch, the changes to Rainwater. In the previous patch, it had a vacuum effect on the opponent, making it suitable to use as a combo launcher against them. Additionally, this move was plus on block as well. So Axl Low was able to use this to try and loop against the opponent and put them into RPS situations where generally Axl was going to be at some kind of advantage. As of this patch, that vacuum effect has been completely removed. The opponent now is launched more forwards as well as at a higher angle, but this certainly kills a lot of Axl Low's combo routing that he had in the previous patch, making him a lower damage character overall. Additionally, on block, the opponent gets pushed back instead of sucked in, so Axl now has to deal with the fact that he can't continually loop this and keep the opponent at a range where he's able to threaten some of his best frame traps. This is a huge nerf to Axl Low, one that I almost think is slightly undeserved. Sure, as someone who usually had to fight against Axl Low instead of someone who played him, the looping Rainwater pressure was somewhat fairly obnoxious to deal with, but it also opened up some pretty cool things for the character to have. Out of all the characters in this patch to receive such a huge nerf, why Axl Low? He's not that popular of a character, nor was he having any sort of strings of success at top-level play because he certainly has his losing matchups. And losing one tool of his that made him at least somewhat competitive in some aspects is certainly a nerf that just reflects an Arc System Works patch where a random low tier gets shot for no reason. In line with other changes, Axl Bomber also has increased damage in this patch now. In the previous patch, this did 60. In the current patch, this is the damage. 67, so a modest damage increase. However, I also have to stress at this moment that this almost doesn't matter because Rainwater was a huge setup tool for Axl Low to actually consistently use his Axl Bomber in combos. And now he's going to have less access to this high damage move as well as the combo routing that he had before with it, again nerfing the character overall. Axl's super, Sickle Storm, has a few changes to go over. There's an adjustment to the blowback where now it launches higher and has a tumble effect, but I haven't seen anything particularly different about that super. Maybe it's something there where it's just a little more reliable to combo into. If anyone's able to give some examples of some practical uses for that particular change in the comments below, I greatly appreciate it, as I haven't seen anything on Twitter, nor have I been able to find anything in my own bit of brief testing on it. More apparent, though, is the fact that Sickle Storm has increased recovery. In the previous version of the game, you had to jump between the two hits of the super in order to get yourself a guaranteed punish. This wasn't too bad, but it was also always a little bit of a weird knowledge check for some new players coming into the game. As you can see, Axl Low recovered pretty quickly after the second hit in the old version. However, with the new patch, you can actually get even close slash starter punishes now against it. So, that is quite a bit of a difference. However, it's probably still worth it to go for a jump over it just to make sure that you get a more optimal punish. But in case you don't get that for whatever reason, you can still get some punishes on Axl Low. So, it is still a nerf overall, though one that shouldn't really matter in too many situations, I think. It's a little weird to look at a character who has several buffs in this patch and then come away with the impression that they're worse off than they were before, simply due to one major nerf that it happened to their toolkit with Rainwater. It's very clear that Arc System Works wants Axl to be like the introductory zoner of the game, getting higher damage from his ranged options overall, changing it so that he can be more aggressive with some of those options, namely with the changes to his Rensen special move, but then losing access to some of his repeated pressure sequences with the vacuum effect of Rainwater being removed, as well as losing access to some consistent high damage combo routing that really let the character keep pace with the rest of the cast that already outdamaged him in the first place. That's just something a little weird, and I can't help but feel like there could have potentially been some sort of middle ground with the Rainwater changes. Maybe remove the vacuum effect on block so that he just can't simply loop that Rainwater pressure, which was RPS that really isn't too rewarding for him, but was still RPS that was weighted in his favor, while keeping the vacuum effect on hit so that he was able to still use it as a combo tool overall. Maybe that would have been the change to go for overall that would have made the Axl player base a little bit happier. And don't get me wrong, like I'm talking about the Rainwater nerf quite a bit, but Axl did get a couple of things to work with, and there's already some Axl players who are trying to forge on and are publishing like combos and things like that the character can potentially do. But he certainly lost, I think, some a bit of his consistency before, just with the fact that he no longer has ways to access some of these high damage routes in these other situations more consistently, because he doesn't set himself up with Rainwater like he used to. Instead, Arc System Works wants him to keep people away at him in a pretty shallow zoning playstyle. And honestly, in a patch like this or in a game like this, if you're looking to play zoners, I think there's better characters that you can look at than Axl Low. There's also been some other changes too, where it seems like his 2K doesn't low profile some things that it used to before, but I'm not sure if that's a change to Axl himself or if that's actually a change to other characters and their hitboxes and hurt boxes. I'm thinking of an interaction with Eno at the moment. So there could be some other things under the surface that have yet to be explored and developed, but it is a bit of a shame because Axl really did have some cool looking combos, and those are going to be gone. And from what I'm usually seeing out of the Axl player base, they're not too happy about this patch despite the number of buffs that the character received. And I think that stands to show just how important Rainwater was to that kit. But maybe the character defined by one single move shouldn't be the case for a fighting game. I don't know. It's an interesting discussion, and I'm more than interested in hearing what some people's thoughts are about Axl Low going forward in this patch.